recording again. Okay, so let's see the program. So now we are already a bit late, but so Ioannis Stamelos is going to start the talk. I think you are chairing, Mark, right? This session.
Yes, yeah.
And then there will be Donatella sharing the session contributed papers, and then I will share the final session. Okay.
Okay. So
you can start.
Start.
Yep.
Okay. My job is to present Ioannis Stamelos. We didn't meet personally. What I know and can tell is that he's professor of software engineering in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, which I know, I've been there. And the thing I can add is that he is president of the Alleanza Greca sulle Tecnologie Aperte. Sorry, Jonathan, but this is how he told me. So, Greek Alliance on the Open Technologies. So, I think that the micro-credentials topic is very interesting. Maybe there is some part of it talking about badges too, maybe. So, please, you have the floor, Ioannis. Thank you.
Marco, thanks a lot for your introduction. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now, the slides?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your kind invitation and many greetings to Kazakhstan. My talk will be around the BlockAdemiC project. This is an ongoing project here in Thessaloniki. And it is about certification of micro-credentials using being open and using open technologies. Please tell me if I'm late with the presentation. So this is the outline of the presentation. There is an introduction. What are micro-credentials? A couple of words about blockchain. I will then describe the project proper. What are the use case scenarios foreseen in this project? What is the technology behind the project? And I will spend some time describing a pilot study that we plan to make. Finally, I have just one slide for conclusion and possible research issues. So introduction, Marco said a couple of things about me. I'm also head of the Software and Interactive Technologies Lab, and I'm director of the Master Program in Technologies of Interactive Systems. I will hand you, of course, the slides, and you can use the links in case you are interested. We are doing some research on open source, especially on open source software engineering. We are interested in metrics, evaluation models, and we also try to apply process mining. Process mining is about discovery of the processes and the ways of work that people use when they employ some information system. In the case of open source communities, we want to understand what kind of processes are followed. And in case there are specific guidelines, if these guidelines are respected by the community. This is a list of recent publications. There is a paper on sentiment analysis, looking at the backtracking process in a specific project, open source project. There is a measure for software usability, which is researched on open source code. There is a proposal for an open source software resilience framework, which means that we want to understand how successful are open source projects when they had to overcome crisis of some kind. The pandemic, for example, is one kind of crisis, or a forking is also a crisis that an open source project might experience. Um, we also started doing some work on blockchain, mainly on applications of the blockchain technology. So there is one paper on how to secure emission data of smart vehicles, or how to use blockchain in supply chain management. And we are also interested in the interoperability of different blockchain platforms. As far as open source teaching, Antonio knows very well this, what we are doing here. In the undergraduate software engineering course, we ask our students to participate in open source projects with various roles since some 15 years ago. And there is also currently a course in open hardware and software technologies at the master level. And this specific course will be the pilot study that I will talk about at the end of the presentation. There are a couple of publications here. And let's proceed talking about micro-credentials. In Europe, you probably all know that we are supposed to follow the new European Digital Education Plan, 21-27. This is a policy initiative. I just quote from the site of EU policy to support the sustainable and effective adaptation of the education and training systems of EU member states to the digital age. This will happen in two ways. First, by building a digital education ecosystem. And the second way is the one that that is close to the theme of this presentation, enhancing digital skills and competencies for the digital transformation. So we want to enhance digital skills and competencies, especially we want to enhance the certification of such skills and competencies. There is no precise definition of macro-credential. Again, quoting from the European Education Plan, micro-credential is a qualification evidencing learning outcomes acquired through a short, transparently assessed course or module. And they can be useful for people that want to build on their knowledge without completing a full education program, or upskill, reskill to meet labor market needs or to develop professionally after starting work. And of course, when we talk about micro-credentials and diplomas, there is a definite need for trustworthiness. I don't know about your countries, but in Greece we have a lot of problems with fake vaccination certificates, fake diplomas, and in any case, it is important to have trust in the skills and knowledge certification of people. What are the micro-credential characteristics? They are focused mainly on skills and competency rather than time. While diplomas, for example, my school will give you a diploma, will give a diploma to students only after 4 years. There is no such limitation in micro-credentials. They should be short and focused, definitely not 4 years, some months or so. So they should be focused on a narrow range of skills and competencies. The students, the learners, have to prove demonstrate that they have a specific skill in whatever way. There is need for quality, there is need for peer and industry review. A micro-credential should be easily recognized by industry. And it should also be personalized, should be modular and stackable, so as a learner can make a collection of micro-credentials in order to create his own profile. And of course, they should be shareable, so a learner can show to others what he knows through his micro-credentials. Examples could be the certificates that some companies already provide since many years, like Microsoft, Cisco, ISTQB, in case you know them. This is an international software testing qualification board at various levels. The certification is in various levels, Agile, Core, Specialist. And then knowledge of a Java technology could be micro-credential, setting and configuring a WordPress site, or knowing what process mining is and be able to use process mining tools, or build some application on a blockchain platform. All this could be examples of micro-credential. And actually, we now have as academic teachers a challenge, because we need to identify in our teaching micro-credentials, or even invent them in order to bring value both to learners and to industry. What a micro-credential should contain: a lot of information. This is a kind of standard that is proposed by EU. Okay, some descriptive data. What is the notional workload needed to achieve the learning outcomes in ECTS? EQF related information, the learning outcomes, a description of what the learner actually knows and has achieved, how it was, what was the type of the learning activity, what were the prerequisites to enroll in this learning activity, whether there was supervision and identity verification. So you see clearly that what I mean when I say that trustworthiness is needed. Quality assurance. What was the grade, if there was a grading scheme, how it compares with other micro-credentials, and whatever further information. Now, blockchain, I guess you are all more or less familiar with blockchain. Blockchain is a growing list of records called blocks that are linked together using cryptography, and each block contains a cryptographic hash of the previous block, a timestamp, and transaction data. This scheme shows how it works. We have blocks that are connected to each other. There is hashing for connecting blocks to the previous and the next block. And the information that is contained here in TX root is also represented in a hashed mode. What are the features and why blockchain is interesting in our case, which I remind you is micro-credential certification. It can store chains of blocks representing transactions. In our case, a transaction would be a micro-credential. It is transparent. It is open source. It is distributed and decentralized with no need of trusted authority. Strong use of cryptography. There is a time stamping, so we know when a micro-credential has been issued, and it is supposed to be secure by design. Now I proceed with a description of the BlockAdemiC project. Funding comes from the European Union and Greece. I think it's like 75% from the European Union and the rest from the Greek Secretariat for Research and Technology under the Research, Create and Innovate program. I apologize for all this Greek on the slide, but we are forced to use them. The BlockAdemiC mission is to create a digital distributed cybersecurity system for the certification, verification of educational activities, qualifications, and skills in the field of higher education and lifelong learning, creating an inviolable educational passport. Partners are the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. We are the largest university in the Balkan area. 1,800 academic staff, 65,000 students, 41 different schools. The Center of Research of Thessaloniki, which is a research institute with 6 distinct research institutions. Ysoft is a software company which specializes in e-wallets. And Web2Learn is another partner who specializes in educational services. The time plan has been extended by 6 months to cope with the hurdles posed by the pandemic. So the project has started in May 20, and it's now planned to finish in October 22. So it's a project that runs for more than 1 year. Analysis and design activities are almost finished. And right in this month, December 21, we expect the delivery of the BlockAdemiC system. My group is not involved in the implementation of the system. The system is implemented by CERT and Ysoft. However, we are heavily involved in the pilot trials that will start in February 22 and will continue until the end of the project. We ran a survey at the beginning of the project asking students and teachers in our university about their expectations from the digital system that would certify the knowledge and skills acquired during university studies. 80 teachers, almost 1,000 students answered, and there was a very warm reaction. Both the teachers and students liked a lot this idea. So that was a great incentive to proceed with the project. And what are the basic features of this project? BlockAdemiC, of course, wants to ensure the required degree of cybersecurity and trustworthiness at both user and institutional level. It is based on monitoring students' activity on learning management systems. There is a gamification aspect to make the whole experience more enjoyable. There are learning analytics, as one might expect. There is automatic handling of ECTS calculations. It eventually registers the acquired skills on blockchain, and most importantly, the certificates that will be produced in this way will be available through e-wallets to students and interested job offering entities. And it will be validated, as we said, through pilot runs. These are the roles, actions, and interactions among them, but I will skip this slide to save some time. How much time do I have? Can you tell me, please?
I think you have half an hour, probably even a bit more.
1 hour?
Half an hour more.
Half an hour.
1 hour is in total.
Okay, fine. Thank you. And interoperability with other systems will be ensured through common schemas or kind of templates for both diplomas, micro-credentials, and certificates. So let's have a look at the scenarios that are foreseen. A teacher here models or defines an assignment on an LMS. Moodle is shown here, however, also e-class will be covered. And sets tokens to assignments and parts of it. There is a token mechanism with students gaining tokens while they work their assignment on Moodle, and this can be used at the end to dictate the assignment of the certification of the micro-credential or not. Students complete assignments on the LMS platform. The tokens are calculated, as we said, they are stored on e-wallets, and then micro-credentials are issued on the basis of the calculated tokens and are stored on a blockchain. Before this, the teacher monitors all this activity, and he's the one that will eventually validate and will permit the issuing of the micro-credentials. In this use case, the student completes a number of ECTS, and the university issues a diploma which is stored on blockchain and is accessible through the student's e-wallet. And this is another scenario that has to do with study continuation. In this case, the student wants to apply for a master course or PhD course, or can participate in the mobility actions of the Erasmus project. In this case, he applies on another university, University B. The university asks for the diploma of the students. There is a verification, a retrieval and verification through the blockchain structure. And finally, if everything is okay, the application is accepted and proceeds. And the student makes available through his e-wallet to the university his own diplomas or micro-credentials in another case. This is a lifelong learning student scenario where students complete some lessons in the lifelong learning program. The program or a lifelong learning center issues a certificate, and we have the same situation as before. And this is probably the most interesting part of all this system, is when a student who has graduated or has completed some micro-credentials applies for a job to a company. So in this case, the company requests a diploma. The student presents his diploma to the company. The company verifies the diploma on the blockchain. If everything is okay, the next step is to request micro-credentials or certificates or badges of any kind. Typically micro-credential or certificates, because a badge is probably something that is already existing, but is more loosely issued to kind of ensure that a learner has some skills and knowledge. Actually, a badge is issued by everybody. So the student presents his micro-credentials and certificates to the company. Same happens again. Everything is checked on the blockchain. And the company knows first that a student has the required skills and that these skills are certified in a trusted way. This is the architecture, the overall architecture of the system. It implements the scenarios we have seen. So students through gamification participate in this third-party platforms, the LMSs. Professor has set up certain activities and controls and verifies that they are accomplished in a successful way. Through plugins, everything is stored on this blockchain. The blockchain, the nodes of the blockchain are the universities that participate in this node, in this network, excuse me. Other entities could also participate, of course. And through smart contracts on the blockchain, certificates are issued or badges or whatever kind of proofs of knowledge we want. And then we have the lifelong learning centers, another university that would accept the student for continuation of studies, and the companies we talked about. What is the technology behind the BlockAdemiC project? Full open source stack. On the learning side, we are using the Experience API and the Caliper standards, although actually the implementation, as we will see later, is not really one-to-one. There is no one-to-one correspondence with these standards. As we said, the Moodle and E-class learning management systems are who are open source, that are open source, are foreseen to be supported by the system. And for blockchain, we use Hyperledger tools, and these come from the Linux Foundation. They are open technologies, and the Iosio platform. The implementation choices, as we said, Hyperledger is by Linux Foundation. So there are tools, libraries, reusable components that are all open source based. We use the Hyperledger in this project, the Hyperledger and Aris library. And Iosio is also an open source blockchain platform that has a couple of very appealing characteristics. There are no transaction fees, while in most blockchain platforms you have to pay for any transaction, and also promises to be really very fast. Now, what are the smart contracts? Just to remind you, smart contracts implement the business logic of a blockchain-based system. They are predefined agreements that check specified rules for a transaction and also store the transaction in the blockchain once these rules are respected. In BlockAdemic, in this project, smart contracts automate the certification of learning outcomes. Tokens are stored in the e-wallets of the student that achieve predefined learning goals that are set and controlled by their teachers on LMS. And also ECTS is automated through smart contracts. An example here, a badge, so something that is not really very strict. Here we have 4 possible learning outcomes. All assignments that are foreseen are delivered after the deadline. Up to half of the assignments are delivered after the deadline, or more than half of the assignments delivered after the deadline. And actually all assignments, or maybe all assignments are delivered before the deadline. And the learning goal is that no assignment is delivered after the deadline. So this would be the more strict implementation of the smart contract. In the case of micro-credential, there are 2 possible learning outcomes, only pass and fail. Remember that there is a teacher controlling of this activity. And the learning goal could be obtain 3 tokens to secure a micro-credential. So for example, if you want to prove that you are a good programmer, you should have, this is just an example, you should have a micro-credential for one programming language, another one for another programming language, and finally, you should have another token that proves that you know how to handle software testing, probably through a certification from ISTQB, as I showed in the previous slide. I will go a bit faster here to save some time. So the XAPI learning prototype standard, is about how to capture the experiences of the learner during his accomplishment of an assignment, and gamification has to do with this. Caliper is another standard that we wanted to use, and this one is based mainly on metrics, as you can see here. So in order to be able to capture the activities of the learner. For example, we want to measure how many times he has communicated with his peers, or what was his what were the results of a quiz, online quiz he took, and so forth. These are just mock-ups. This is the login page. This is the teacher menu. He can issue schemas and credentials and so forth. This is all these, of course, are from a mobile phone. Okay, so you will have an app on your phone to use the system, and of course you can use it through a browser. So this is a screen for issuing a credential. The student menu has his wallet with diplomas he has, certificates, skills, and so on. This is a mock-up of the certificate. So it would be the title, who awarded it, and so on, how many CTS, etc. This is a company menu, which allows the company to look for suitable candidates for the kind of job they are offering. And here will be the search candidates screen, looking for specific micro-credentials in the blockchain. And university menu, and another sample screen for a university. This one is the revocation of a credential. If for some reason the credential, one credential must be revoked. So let's have a look at the pilot studies. We are going to have 4 pilot master courses in the spring semester, next semester. These are courses of the Aristotle University. However, a couple of other universities, the University of Macedonia, the University of Thessaloniki, have expressed interest to participate. We also have a couple of learning centers that are very much interested in this project. And the pilot study I wanted to present you is the one that I am going to teach. The course is called Open Hardware Software Technologies. There is a part on hardware, but I am involved in the part on software. The syllabus of this course, as far as software is concerned, has to do with basics of open source software, examples, governance of open source project, metrics and evaluation models, adoption of open source and what is going on in the public sector as far as open source solutions are concerned. And there is a 10 project, and this one will lead to micro-credential. The 10 project, Antonio knows already what we are doing there. There are specific assignment tasks to students. They have, first of all, to select a project to work on, but there are some restrictions. Only mature projects are allowed with numerous participants. And however, the students are allowed to choose any application area they like, whatever technology they want to use, so that this endeavor becomes an interesting task to them. And they have to analyze various project aspects. They have to contribute to the project, and finally have to produce a report and present their work in the class. How will they analyze or evaluate an open source project? First, they will execute a qualitative analysis of the project by inspecting the project policies, the techniques that are used, if any, tools, forum discussions, and so on. Then another way to analyze the project and evaluate it is through performing some measurements, both of the activity of the community and by measuring the various code aspects, such as readability, reusability, whatever. They can use ready-made measurements, for example, the insight function of GitHub, open source tools like the Matrix Reloaded of IntelliJ IDEA. We also give them a couple of custom tools that we have developed here. For example, there is one on measurements for PHP or for measuring the resilience of the project. The project evaluation must be done through the use of of a specific evaluation model. Typically, we propose to them the use of QSOS. In case you know it, it is an evaluation model that was developed in the context of a European project. And also by comparing the current project with other similar open source projects on a qualitative basis. The students must contribute to the project, for example, through bug fixing, committing new code. Refactoring is also one choice they have through, for example, measurement of codes of bad smells in the code. Documentation, but this is less important. They have to actively collaborate with the community. This is a prerequisite to get the micro-credential. And eventually, they have to deliver a report of 10 to 15 pages with whatever they have done and measured and analyzed results and so on, and a slide presentation that must be delivered to the class. They need to, for sure, to explain what was the interaction with the community. You don't get a micro-credential if you don't have a good interaction with the community. And they are also allowed to report both positive and negative experiences. Sometimes in open source, collaboration is not as easy and fruitful as one might expect, but this is allowed for these student assignments. So the micro-credential, this is a very draft title, could be open source software certified participant. Probably the title will be different, but we haven't decided yet. So the prerequisites are attend a formal course on open source software. So there is a theoretical knowledge of what is OSS. The skills that the learner has to demonstrate is that he can analyze and describe an open source project in terms of its governance, policies, techniques, tools, community structure. We ask them to provide an instance of the Onion model for describing an open source community. They also have to demonstrate that they are able to measure by using tools, evaluate and compare this project to other ones, and also to be able to collaborate with open source project members and make useful contributions. The verification of all this is done first and most importantly from the approval of community of students' contributions. So if the student contributes stuff to the project, but this stuff is rejected, then he will not be granted the micro-credential. He has to deliver a comprehensive report, as we said, make an open presentation to the class, answer questions, and so on. And finally, there is definitely a need for approval by the teacher. This is the final slide of this presentation. So what we have discussed is a system to safely capture learning achievements and store them in an immutable data structure using open technologies. And now there is a list of research issues here. We plan to work on all these things in the year to come. First, we need empirical validation of the usage scenarios, how well they work, how much time they take, and so on. What is the level of success of the students? Of course, we have to ask students, teachers, and managers, both university managers and company managers, about how satisfied they are with this system. We need to benchmark the system to validate the technical choices and make sure that the system has no bugs, has no weak points, it is fast enough, it is easy to use and stuff like this. We are interested in how to specify smart contracts, either formally or starting by very loosely defined texts, like the ones we've seen in the slides before, and then gradually refine them in order to reach higher levels of detail. Eventually, the code of the software of the smart contracts could be produced. Interoperability with other blockchain platforms will be researched because already there are some academic institutions or companies that or public networks. So blockchain is used in all these cases, and we want to make sure that this the BlockAdemic blockchain system will be interoperable with all these cases. We want to engage companies for recruitment of people in this project. We are already in touch with companies like Deloitte and Accenture that we hope that will be interested in this kind of system. And of course, we want to register whatever lessons are learned from this project. So thanks a lot for attending, and I will be happy to receive questions.
Okay, thank you, Ioannis. If the audience has some questions, this is the time. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, I have just a small question about the blockchain technology you are going to use. Are you aware that some of these technologies use a lot of energy and they can be heavy on carbon impact, and so perhaps should use one that has a lower impact than, for example, Bitcoins?
Okay, thanks. The IOSIO platform is a strange platform. There is no transaction fees in this platform, and although I'm not an expert in this technology, you get this free usage of the platform because of the inflation. There are EOS coins that are produced each time you use the platform and are delivered to the developers and the community behind the platform. So I think that IOSIO has not really a strong environmental impact. But honestly, I'm not an expert, so maybe what I'm saying is not 100% correct.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? Well, I might ask something while some question is developed. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And I see that this is something that is starting and developing, so it's also quite attracting as a research topic. One thing that I've been thinking is that companies here get into the picture only as far as recruitment is concerned. And of course, the project is about universities, so it's since the name, so this is clear. But I wanted to know two things actually. Why only the universities and not the companies? And if there are kind of requirements. I mean, the university, of course, is the best possible provider for knowledge and things. But are there requirements that you impose on universities, in order to be able to get into this program? And the second question would be how things would change if companies can become providers, I mean issuers. Is it clear?
Yes, Marco, thanks for the question. Actually, I was expecting this question. We want to propose this system at the European level. So you know how the European Commission works. They will for sure want to have to be on the safe side. So at the beginning, only universities and learning centers, recognized and registered learning centers, will be able to provide micro-credentials, okay, and students and companies will be the consumers. But yes, I agree that in the long run, gradually, companies, especially the big and known ones, could also give micro-credentials to their employees. I'm not sure how interesting this scenario will be for companies, but definitely is something that could happen in the future. In case this happens, just to answer the second question, I think that the company that would provide its employees with micro-credentials would be definitely more appealing as a job offerer, because you would be employed by this company, and your knowledge would be built on what would be increased and enhanced on what you do while working for that company. So that will be positive for the company. Maybe there will be, you know, the human resource management departments may be a little bit skeptic, like, you know, I recruit someone, he learns, and then he leaves. Okay, with his knowledge certified by me. Okay, so you know, these are more business concerns, and honestly, I would prefer to ask them to have an answer to this question. However, technically, yes, it is absolutely possible. In the first version of BlockAdemic 1.0, let's say, you have to register if you're going to be allowed to enter micro-credentials in the blockchain. Students, of course, and companies do not need to register, and maybe just register to give their personal information, and that's all. But a university has to register there in order to prove that it exists and it is recognized and so on. We don't want at the beginning to let anyone randomly insert micro-credentials in the system. Remember that micro-credentials are not, whatever you insert in the blockchain is immutable, so you cannot erase it. So, you know, this is why we prefer to be on the safe side right from the beginning. Hopefully I answered what you asked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anybody else? Question now?
Well, just one comment, because I noticed you mentioned community in your talk, and you also mentioned future research. So this afternoon, I'm giving a talk on communities of practice for formal methods. Maybe we were studying your community in that sort of framework. It's a social science framework. So that might be something for somebody to do. I don't know what stage you are at with your community development and so on. But I guess if you do attend this afternoon, you might think about your own community and the way it fits into this sort of social science framework.
If I understand well your comment, we are currently building the system internally. Once the system is developed and tested, it will be the code will be open to everybody, and then a community might be formed.
Right.
Are you talking about the community of the system, of the BlockAdemic system, or community in general of learners?
No, I'm talking about the people. So yes, you start off a community with a few people doing something interesting, and then gradually people get more and more interested, you know, you hope, and eventually it all dies again. So the communities build up. You hope that community might then create other communities, as a typical thing that happens with a successful community. I mean, it sounds like you're fairly early stages, perhaps, but yes, as you sort of send it out, you might find it useful to think about how you develop your community. If you want your system to be successful, you want lots of people to use it. You need people who can actually promulgate what you're doing, you know, through conferences, books, you know, maybe papers. Certainly, there's always different ways to do that. And I guess I've done that through my career without thinking about it too much with other communities in the formal methods arena. And now thinking back, you know, I guess we did the sort of things you should do for community building, but it's always useful to have somebody within your set of people who are starting this community off, who have the skills and interest to actually, you know, expand your community.
Fine. When will your talk be delivered?
It's at 2 o'clock, I think, GMT. So if you can adjust that. I'm the second talk this afternoon. So,
Okay, this is 4
So it's 4 p.m. for you.
Probably I will be able to attend.
okay, that's great. I'll look forward to seeing you there. I mean, some of it might be helpful to you to think about community building aspect. But it may not be you that does that, you know, it may be others, because in a community you have all sorts of different skills. You know, some are technical, but for a community you also need some more, I guess, community building skills as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's past 1, so probably we have to stop, right, Antonio? I
Yes,
would have some more
we
questions, but
break.
it's time to take a break. Yeah.
Yeah, I stopped the